I'm definitely rattled. Good evening, everyone. Hope everybody is doing well. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is a committee of the whole, and we are meeting under the auspice of the Finance Subcommittee. The Superintendent, Josh Vidala, Dr. Vidala, will be presenting some early numbers on our school budget. And certainly we are behind, again, typically how we operate here as a school committee and as a city. But I think all cities and towns are dealing with similar situations as Peabody is with COVID, trying to get the very best numbers we can from the state and from the federal government, and some direction and guidance as to how money is going to be utilized here. And we're certainly a little bit behind, but I think we'll be able to put the budget together pretty quickly. More and more information is coming. We did receive the House budget shortly before today. Meeting, and that is giving us some more guidance, but there's still some steps to take place before we have a final budget. But we want to jump into this, and we're starting the meeting at 6:34. Why don't we get started, Dr. Vidala, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for the committee, before you, we have the first draft of the working budget, and this is similar to the document that is posted on our website once it's finalized. So this is a working budget, and our strategy for this was to put everything that we've discussed, our priorities, and what we believe it's going to take to run the school district next year. And so the total number that we're at right now is $80,653,444. So that's where we're at right now. And you know, we are in talks with what we are getting for Chapter 70 money, what the minimum contribution is. The city is gracious enough to give us an additional allocation each year. That's incorporated into the final number that the city has. And then what we'll do is identify the difference between what we believe it takes to run the district and what we're able to get from the city. And that'll be considered what would be our deficit. However, this year we have a number of federal stimulus grants that we can utilize in order to offset the budget and make sure that we're giving the kids exactly what they need. So, you know, this budget does talk a lot about all the different values that we have and the priorities that we've discussed, and I'd like to kind of go through each location, talk about what we've done, how we've done it, answer questions, and then schedule another meeting for potentially next week where we can really expand, get the details behind it, and really dig deeper into it. But so tonight I wanted to give a broad brush. So if we flip over to the next page, which is called page 1. So this gives us the district profile. Last year we had about 6,000 students in the district. It's broken down by what we had last year and what we're projecting this year. So we were projecting about 6,200 coming into last year, but as you know, we're down about 180 students this year. And so overall we're right at about 6,000. And we're projecting that we'll see an increase in kindergarten and grade 1, and then some of the other grades as well. So we're anticipating about 61,000 students. So if you look at page 2, this gives us an overview of the budget and the breakdown over the past 3 years, fiscal year 20, 21, and 22. And you'll see it's broken down by the school locations at the top and the departments and other ordinary budgets down at the bottom. And so, you know, we'll go through each one of those individually and talk about where you see some significant increases and where you see some decreases. So if we continue to turn, the next page 3 breaks it down by staffing. And so at the top we see $41 million in staffing to the school budgets, and within those sub-locations you see a number of staffing allocations there, and so we're looking at about $12 million. So out of the total $80 million budget, we're looking at $54 million in staffing. And you'll notice that if we go to the very bottom of that page, from left to right, in fiscal year 20, there were 880 positions in the budget. We reduced that by 100. Now remember that a number of those positions were the custodians that are now on the city side. They're still working for us, but represented in a different budget. And so we're looking to bring a number of people back. So 827, which is an increase of 46 positions, and we'll really get through exactly what those positions are. I do want to note that this number $780.9 is what was voted for in June of 2020. And as you recall, we did add some paraprofessionals, and we added some teaching positions over the summer. So those are included in our final number now, but not in that number of 780. So the next page we look at, page 4, is our ordinary budgets. So you notice modest budgets in the schools at the top, and then larger budgets, so non-salary items, and you'll see big numbers in special education, central administration, which includes our health insurance and things like that. So those are all non-salary items. And so the total for the non-salary is about $26 million. So now if we really get into the details, if we turn the page to page 5, what I did is I met with each building principal, and we went through this. And I think the best way to look at this is if we look at the top, the two columns that we want to look at are the FY22 FTEs, so those are the number of positions, and the budget. So we look at those two numbers to make sure that that is accurate. And what I like to do is look at how many positions are we funding on a certain line and compared to last year. So for example, in the brown, at the principal line, there's a full-time principal and a full-time assistant principal, which compared to last year is the same amount of people. You'll notice that there's an increase here. Many of our budgets do not have an increase, and we're operating without an increase. What this reflects is we have a longevity increase to one of the people, and the other one was underfunded last year, which we realized after the fact. We were able to absorb that salary. So this is a correction. This is an accurate reflection of those two salaries. As we go down, there's one clerk, there's 3 kindergarten teachers, 1 reading teacher, and what you'll notice in every budget, we've pulled out of the school the art and music teacher and moved them into the performing arts budget at the elementary level. So all of our elementary schools have shared specialists, and we're putting those into that budget so that we can reflect it in one place and see them all and allocate them as we need to. So when we get to the performing arts budget, we're going to see a big increase there. So we'll see a decrease in music and art, and that's going to come back when we go to the performing arts budget. The brown will have 15 general education teachers, and then you'll notice down under the line of special education, it's location 1012, we see an increase in 1 special education teacher at the brown, and that is because we've seen an increase in the number of students for some of our programs, and we're looking to add a special education teacher there. You'll also see in every elementary budget a $10,000 teacher fellow, and you'll see our kindergarten paraprofessionals added back in, which were backed out. Those 2 line items in every elementary, they were funded out of the ESSER grant last year, so we're putting them in because we value them and we believe that they should be in the budget. And as we look at when we reduce it, we can decide if that is something we want to move back to the grant. We'll still be able to pay them, but I did want to reflect that this is the total budget that we'd be looking at. You'll also see a library tutor in every elementary budget, which is a half-time position. And that is, again, a grant-funded position this year, but we wanted to reflect that in the current budget. And so overall, we're looking at an increase of about 5 staff members at the Brown. We are taking a look at our ordinary budgets, and we're funding based on enrollment this year. $50 per pupil for the ordinary, and then you'll see that in the central office line, there's a big increase because we're going to be purchasing more things as a district from central office to give the schools more autonomy with their money locally. But they shouldn't be paying for district-wide supplies. We'll be paying for that out of the central office budget. And so it's just a little bit of a change in the reflection. So for example, there's a Wilson's Foundations line that was in many of those budgets. We're paying for that out of central office to free up more autonomy for the principals. So I'll pause right here. And you know, this is sort of how we've looked at each location, and we can go. I want to go through each one individually, but I want to stop and see if there's any questions around what we're talking about. So the big changes at the Brown is an increase in the special education teachers as well as some paras, and we're bringing back kindergarten paras, a teacher fellow, and a library tutor. So I'll pause right there if there's any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Vidala. Any questions for the superintendent at this time? Ms. Carpenter?
Thank you, through the chair to the superintendent. Can you just touch back on art, I know you said that's gonna reflect later on under the performing arts lines. Is there any change in the amount of time or the people inside each schools?
So when we do get there, there's a 0.2 increase in both music and art. So that is a reflection of the center school currently has a 0.8. And we're looking to bump that up to a full-time position, given the size of their enrollment has been increasing. And so we're looking to have 5 music teachers and 5 art teachers to serve our 8 elementary schools.
Thank you.
And so what we've done is the schools that have 3 classrooms per grade would get a 0.6, 3 days a week, and the schools that have 2 classrooms per grade would get a 0.4, 2 days a week. And so they'll be paired up, and so that's how the 5 days. There'll be one person will go to a small elementary, and then one person will go to a medium elementary. And then a school like the Carroll would get a full-time person.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Any other questions for the superintendent at this time? Mr. Huckman?
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Vidala, I see that you've talked about it, and you're introducing a library tutor into the budget. What's the difference between paraprofessionals that I think we had in the past and a tutor?
So the difference between a tutor and a para is right now in the para contract, they cannot be alone with students. So previously, before this year, there would be a library class. The teacher would stay with the class and the para, and they would have library. But the teacher would not get a prep period. And so by bringing a tutor in, which is a different role, they're able to be alone with the students, and that gives the elementary teachers that 5th preparation period that's in their contract. So it becomes a 5th special.
Thank you. Through you to Dr. Vidala. So is this a Unit A position?
No,
It's still a unit?
it's a non-union position.
Unit C or not?
No, it's a non-union position.
Non-union position.
Yep, similar to our Title I tutors that are alone with students to do some reading support. So a lot of it is, sometimes it's a retired teacher who came back as working part-time, but it's a non-union position.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huckman. Mr. Amico?
Thank you through the chair. Dr. Dell, thank you for putting this together for us, and the business manager as well. Just a quick question on that library tutor. So that will not fall under Title? Sorry about that. So getting back to the tutor, that will not fall under Title I, that will be in this budget here?
So this year it's represented in ESSER 1.
Okay.
So we are paying it out of a grant. However, since it's in every budget, we wanted to put it in here. We know that this is a number that is over what we will be allocated, but I wanted to show that this is something we value and want in the budget. We can always move it to a grant, but I wanted to represent everything in the first draft before we got to the number that we need to get to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amico. Mrs. Dunn, and then I'll go to Mr. Olympio.
Thank you. It's just a question about, if I may, supply under library books. Is that going to be in a different place in the budget, or is it is? Okay.
Yes, and in the next iteration as well, we'll really get into the detail. Right now, we're focused on that total number of $50 per student, and then in the second draft of the budget, I'll be meeting again with the principals to go over their ordinary budgets.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Mr. Olympio?
Hello. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Vidala, for putting this together and everyone involved. With the library tutor, is that, so every elementary school is going to have one?
They have one this year, yes.
Okay,
So
and what about, would that be available for Higgins?
the
or-
Higgins has a para already. They have a library para, and that will be included in there as well. And then the high school has a library media specialist, which is in Unit A. It's a full-time position.
Okay, and have the elementary tutors been hired, or how is that process?
Yes, they've been working all year. Last
Okay.
summer, we hired one for each elementary school through the ESSER grant. They've been doing that. Many of it was retired teachers, who came back, or pre-service teachers who are looking, to sort of get their foot in the door in Peabody.
Gotcha.
And so it worked out well, and the students got a library class, and the teachers got their 5th prep. So we'll be looking to continue that next year.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olympio. Mr. Arnottis?
This one? Oh, okay, there we go. Thank you for your presentation and putting this together. I know we all appreciate it, it's very helpful. Well, we're on the subject of libraries, I don't want to jump ahead, but I know you mentioned a library media specialist at the high school. I know in the past, and feel free if anyone else wants to jog my memory on this, but I believe we had made a reduction in the library, whether it was last year or 2 years ago, and that was a bit of a sticking point because I think the library might have been unmanned by a librarian at the time, if that jogs everyone's memory. And I had a few people speak to me about that at the time, and I just wanted to see, is this a library media specialist who's replacing that? Is the library in the high school going to be staffed on a regular basis? Is that something
Yes,
that's
there'll be a
happening here?
full-time, there is this year, and there will continue to be. It's part of the NEASC requirements for accreditation that we do have a full-time person. I know there was a position here that was reallocated, and then they brought in the para to make sure that it was staffed as well.
Okay, great.
So now every school will have someone in the library.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Turn it back to you, Dr. Vidala.
Sure. And so for these next budgets, we'll really talk about what the changes are. I wanted to kind of go through a little bit more detail in the first one. So as we look at the Burke is seeing a large fifth grade class move on to middle school, and you'll notice that their fourth grade class is smaller. So they had 13 teachers in grades 1 through 5, in grades 2, K through 5, and next year they'll have 12. So we're looking to reduce its line 2006, general instruction, from 11 teachers to 10. And that is a reflection of, it will be a reflection of a retirement, and sort of just absorbing that position. We'll only need 2 fifth grade teachers next year, as opposed to 3. We'll also be looking, you'll notice that the special education line looks like it's going from 8 to 7.5. It is 8 people. There's just 1 half-time employee. You'll notice that the salaries didn't reduce any. In fact, they went up. So that was just an error in how the people were counted. One of those employees is a half-time. Their salary was correct last year, but the FTE was a little bit off. We also see a little bit of a reduction in our special ed paraprofessionals. Those people were reflected in the grant. So they're not seeing a reduction in their staffing. However, they're represented in, when you see the detail, you'll see their names, and they're represented in the grant total. So the Burke does see a little bit of a decrease, but you will see we have our addition of the teacher fellow, the kindergarten para is brought back into the budget, as well as the library tutor. And there's a little bit of a reduction there as well for their ordinary budget. However, as I stated, we purchased a number of the things that they had wanted this year. We had purchased from the district office, bought foundations kits for everyone, Wilson reading supplies and things like that, so that their budget can go to specific things for students and teachers. So questions on the Burke?
Okay, seeing none, Dr. Vidala,
Great.
you can go to the
Okay,
next
so
school.
we move to the Carroll. So the major changes in the Carroll, it looks as though there's a reduction of an ELL teacher that's moving to a grant, and what we're doing is adding a special education teacher. So the big change for them is you'll see an additional special education teacher. That's a new staff member given the enrollment. We wanted to add that, and then here we see our kindergarten paras back, we see our teacher fellow, and we see our library tutor. So overall, and you'll see your reduction of art and music, which will be moving to the grant. So overall, you'll see an increase of 1 full-time position as the special ed teacher, and then it looks as though there's a little bit of a decrease in the budget, and we'll see that increase reflected in performing arts. Again, you'll see that the ordinary budget is $50 per pupil, and we're looking at pretty flat enrollment for them, estimating about 564. So this is our biggest school as far as our elementaries go. So other than the additional special ed teacher, no major changes at the Carroll.
Any questions at this point on the Carroll School? Okay, seeing none, Dr. Vidala?
Great. So we move to the center. So you notice if I start at the very bottom, our enrollment was 408 this year. We're anticipating about 420 students. So the major change is a contractual one at the center, and it's really a two-for change, right? We benefit twice on this. So that you'll notice that there's an additional position in the principal's office. So it'd be a recommendation of a full-time assistant principal pursuant to the Unit B contract. We would move that person to a full-time position, and then you'll see that is going to be a benefit in the ELL department as well, because that's a shared position right now. So the ELL students will get more service if that person does not have to be an assistant principal as well, and we'll see the assistant principal position. In addition, at the center, because of the enrollment that you'll see, there's an increase of 2 positions in the general education line. One of those was added over the summer of last year, and the second one we're looking to add another one. So our 5th grade class that's moving on has 3 teachers, but as they're moving up, grades 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, we're looking at 4 teachers per grade. So as their younger kids are coming in, we see bigger and bigger enrollment. So we'd be looking at an increase of the teachers as well as the assistant principal, full-time assistant principal. Questions on the center?
Any questions?
Okay. So with the McCarthy as our next one, again, we're looking at very stable enrollment here. We would see a bigger increase in our preschool, which our numbers were down. However, the preschool teachers are reflected in the special ed budget, so you won't see the preschool teachers here. Looks as though there's a reduction of an ELL teacher from a 1.0 to a 0.4, and that's just an accurate reflection of the staffing. So there is a person who is shared between the Burke, the West, and the McCarthy, and so 2 days a week, 0.4, there at the McCarthy. So previously that was in there. You'll see that in each of those budgets. So that person's now reflected accurately. And so for the McCarthy, you'll see an increase in their budget because it looked as though they were underfunded for their ordinary budget, and now $50 per pupil, there's a little bit of an increase. So we're trying to make an equitable school supply budget for all of our schools. Questions on McCarthy?
Thank you, Dr. Vidal. Not so much in the budget, but in the projected enrollment. We're looking at a significant increase. Is that pre-K or is that K to 5?
So the biggest increase we see is in pre-K. We did have some distancing issues with pre-K, so we really saw a decrease in that enrollment. We're expecting that to go back up to level. So we've gotten a lot of interest already. So we're expecting that. The projected number of 120 is consistent for 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and 4 years ago. That's pretty much the average that we had prior to COVID.
And again, through the chair to you, I don't believe we made any reductions in the staffing for the pre-K, so we're not seeing any increase. We're just seeing a rebound of the
Correct. We're just
number.
seeing full classes as opposed to
Yeah.
75%.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the McCarthy School? Okay, Dr. Vidala?
Okay, at the South School, what we've seen is there is an increased need for special education students at the South, as well as the pre-K students in PASOs. The principal and assistant principal have done a wonderful job of really incorporating PASOs into their school. When we include the PASOs numbers in the enrollment, they're up around 437. So they're a large school with a lot of kids in there each day. So knowing that they need a full-time special education teacher, I'm also recommending that we move to a full-time assistant principal in line with the enrollment in the Unit B contract, so that there would be a full-time principal and assistant principal, and then the special education teacher would be able to serve a number of more students. And so that line for special education where you see the 2 teachers, right now one of them is serving as an assistant principal and often gets pulled away from students. So adding a full-time assistant principal to accommodate everyone in the school with over 400 students will also give us more time with special education students. So that's the major change with the South Elementary School. And then you see the budget as well at $50 per pupil brings them up to $21,000. Questions on the South?
Mr. Miko?
Thank you, Dr. Vidala. You mentioned the center having, going over the 400 students. The South is going over the 400 students. Do we have any other schools? I know you're going to go through them, but my recommendation is that we move the part-time assistant principals to full-time assistant principals. Not only is enrollment going up, but also the social, emotional, and everything else needs to be met. So do we have any other buildings that are like that as well?
So no other buildings that are that close to 400. However, I would say that, this is a step in the right direction, so we'd be increasing from 2 to 4, and that maybe next year we can take a look again and maybe phase in some more full-time assistant principals. I think doing it all at once might be a little budget prohibitive, but I think 2 is ambitious, and I think it serves our kids well, and those are 2 schools that have large enrollments.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Dr. Vidal, just so I understand this correctly, the increases that you're showing at the South in particular, does the 308, the enrollment for 2020, 2021 on the chart you provided us shows 398 pupils at the South. Does that include Pasos?
That's inclusive of 47 PASO students, which is, again, a significant decrease in what they typically have. They usually have about 70.
Okay. And then the projected number for 2021, 2022 at 437 also includes Pasos.
Correct.
And do you know how many of the 437 would be Pasos students?
70.
70?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and so if we flip the page to 11, our Welch Elementary School. Okay, so as you know, our Welch School is one of our needier schools, and so one of the big increases here is we wanted to, they have 3 special education teachers. One of them is being paid out of Title I grant right now, so I'm advocating that that gets moved into the appropriated budget to reflect an equitable service for special education, and that would free up their Title I funds to bring in another interventionist. Right now, they have 1 reading teacher and 1 math interventionist, as well as the trauma specialist in their Title I budget. By moving this special ed teacher into the appropriated budget, which should be a level playing field to what the other schools in the district have, they would be able to then utilize their Title I funds to supplement more interventions and provide their kids with a little bit more. So that's the big change in the Welch, is adding that special ed teacher into the appropriated budget so they can get another interventionist with their Title I funds. And you'll see a modest increase as well in their appropriated budget when we go with the $50 per pupil.
Question?
Sorry, Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you. Through the chair, the pre-kindergarten, 30 children, can you tell me a little bit about the preschool that they have there? In years past, preschool numbers weren't really included in the total student count. Previously, we had rented space at the Welch School for, say, like Head Start. Can you tell me about this program?
Sure.
Who runs it
Yep.
and
So this is a certified teacher with a pre-K certification, so pre-K with and without disabilities. And on a typical year, it's 2 half-day sessions, so they have 15 students in the morning, 15 students in the afternoon. And it's paid through our Title I funds. So the teacher is funded through Title I, and it is a free preschool program for Welch or McCarthy and Center. They could be the sending districts. This year, we limited that number to 19, just for space, and we would be bringing that back up to 15 per next year. So right now, it's not an integrated group. It's anybody can go to it, but it's funded through Title I.
So just to clarify, did you say that the preschool is for Welch, McCarthy, and Center students?
They could, yes, anyone from those 3 schools is paid for out of Title I. Those are Title I schools. They could send kids to that program. It's given spaces available. We have 30 seats for that.
And it's half a day, so there's a morning program and an afternoon program?
Correct.
And is this run under, say, like the director at the McCarthy? Who oversees this part of the school?
So right now, we sort of run that through the school and through central office with the Title I. And so it's sort of overseen right now by the building principal. However, later in the budget, we'll be talking about a director of early childhood, which we would have oversee all of our early childhood programming to really make sure that we're tightening that up and having some consistency across all three of our programs, PASOs, Title I preschool, and the integrated preschool.
And it's, you said it was free, and it's through Title I. Is there requirements for these students to go in there, or
They're just required to live in one of those
just
three districts.
live in one of
Yep.
those?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Olympio?
Yeah, real quick. Dr. Vidal, the extracurricular for each of the elementary schools, is that like basketball, boys and girls basketball?
Yes, so on a typical year, we see a $3,900 stipend. It's broken to, the contract is $650, so there's a boys and girls coaching for
Yep.
basketball, and then they have a little bit of leeway around some other art projects or soccer programs or things like that. So they each have $3,900 divided by 650. They have that many spots.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Amico? Anybody else questions for Dr. Vidal at this point?
Okay, at the West Elementary, in addition to the teacher fellow and the kindergarten paras, we're looking to add an additional special education teacher, and that is for our program students. So you'll see in line 8012, going from 4 special educators to 5 special educators at that school. And then they'll be bringing the budget up to 12.5 for their ordinary budget, which is, again, a modest increase. So overall, everything else is pretty much level funded at the West. Okay, if we move on to the Higgins, we are looking at the majority of positions we would be looking to level fund again. So they would be consistent across the board for our principal's office and our clerical support and our art teachers. So these ones, because it's one school, they're going to be included in the budget. We are looking to add 2 teachers at the, in terms of general education, we're looking to add 2 teachers. We're seeing that with the remote, they were able to kind of absorb some of that with the exploratories, but they need to bring a reading interventionist back. We thought that that would be a really good position in one of the exploratories to address some of the learning loss, especially for our rising 6th graders and some of our 7th graders as well. And then they would be looking to add another exploratory as well. And so we can get into the details of that when we have the detailed budget. And they're also looking to add an ELL teacher, so to go from 3 to 4 as they see incoming 6th grade and as they move up, we're seeing an increase in our ELL population. We want to make sure that we serve them as well. And then we level funded for the Higgins, we level funded their supplies, and so their overall budget just sees the 3 additional teachers really to address the learning loss. Okay. If we move on to the high school. Oh, sure.
Yeah, thank you. Just a general question. I think it applies to all of the teaching salary lines. The numbers that we're seeing in the, we'll use the Higgins just for example since we're on it. The increase that we're seeing, that absorbs the 2 additional teachers that you're seeking?
Correct.
Steps, lanes, and COLA for all teachers in the building?
Yes, so right now we're doing steps and lanes, and since we have not agreed on a COLA number, we can reserve that in like a central office separate line item.
Okay.
But right now, these are just steps and lanes,
Steps, lanes, plus the 2
plus
FTEs.
the additional teachers that you see, and we're funding those at about, we approximate $65,000 for a new position.
And does this number also reflect longevity?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yep.
the only thing
The only
that
difference
we're
would be the COLA, which has not been
Sure.
agreed upon.
Okay, thank you.
That just needs to be collectively bargained. Yep. Okay, so the high school, if we look at the high school, you'll notice that in the principal's office, last year we had reduced a dean's position when we voted the budget, and then we brought it back over the summer because we had we were able to absorb some money. So that was voted on last summer, and so now you see that reflected in as 5. So it's still the principal, 1 assistant principal, and 3 deans, which is what they were operating on this year. But it is in addition from what was voted on last year at the budget time. And so as we go down, most of the positions at the high school are level funded. There was a reduction in a science teacher that was added. I think that was where we added a reading teacher. There was a reduction in the art teachers, which last summer we added a school adjustment counselor. So those are all reflected in this budget. And the only major change that we're seeing here is we did have a recommendation to add 2 special education teachers to the budget. So where they have 13 this year in line 10020, they're looking for 15 this year. And again, really try to address that learning loss as the students come in, looking to maybe pilot some co-teaching at the high school. Saw some success at the Brown, so we're looking to see if we can do that. So they're looking to add 2 special educators at the high school. And then the building access attendants, so it looks like we voted 3 last year when we would have 4 people this year, but one of them was a .8. So I think we had discussed that previously, but that's an increase there of .8 FTEs. And then their ordinary budget was level funded as well. Questions on the high school? Okay.
And we're adding it looks like an adjustment counselor?
So that was the one that was added last year.
Okay.
We had that last summer, so that person has been working since the summer, but it's different from the budget last year, yes. Some of the other ones will move a little quicker. Peabody Learning Academy is really level funded, the same 3 teachers, and so the director and the 2 teachers, and we're level funding their supply line. So their budget's pretty modest as well. We're anticipating pretty much the same number of students. Vocational is actually a little bit flat this year in terms of their enrollment. But we are reflecting, last year we had anticipated putting the director of vocational, so I'm on page 16 now, in the Perkins grant. That's why you only see a $3,000 salary. But you know, we were not able to do that. We were able to absorb that salary, but it's fully funded here at $68,000. And then the rest of those positions are level funded, and their budget for ordinary is also level funded. So those are pretty much the school budgets. The next ones are more of the curriculum-based ones.
Mr. Arnottis?
Thank you. Are we reducing a social studies teacher and a business teacher as well?
I believe those were all done last year through retirements, and then they were adding, are you talking about the high school?
Yeah.
So this is really just level funding what they had. There were some changes after the business teacher had retired, after the budget was voted, and they were repurposed into other line items. So overall, they're seeing a pretty flat FTE change. It's pretty much exactly the same as it was last year with what they were operating on. So they had a position that they didn't fill, so they were 1 under, and so that's where they had the dean and things like that. But overall, they had a position that was unfilled all year, and in order to get that back into the budget, they're looking for 2 positions. So they operated this year with 134 staff members, and we're looking for 135.8. So we'd be looking for, those 2 positions would be special educators. Great. Okay, so for curriculum development, you'll see a big increase here, and it's really in the curriculum instructional software materials, going from 10,000 to 183,000. So that number is represented really by the Math in Focus curriculum that we have. We took that from everywhere we could this year to pay for that, and so I'm reflecting it here, and that is something that we can pay out of a different account. We can pay that out of the ESSER funds, but I wanted to reflect it here. This is an actual cost in this budget. Pretty much everything else is level funded. But that's a big cost for that new math curriculum that we have, which has online components for all students in the K-5 grades. If we look at performing arts, I think this is really the big change for us. So previously, there was one FTE for a teacher, the professional line 15002, and we'll be looking to add 5 art teachers and 5, so performing arts is music and visual arts is traditional art that we think of. So we're doing 5 and 5. The position that was in there last year was the 5th grade instrumental music teacher, and so she'll continue to be in there. So we're looking to add those positions into our performing arts and level fund their ordinary budget. And so those people will be split up and shared across the 8 elementary schools, 5 music teachers and 5 art teachers. And
Mr. Hockman?
Yeah, thank you. So, just so I understand that you pulled those music and art teachers out of the elementary budgets and you're just,
we're just we're putting them here so that they're accurately reflected.
okay, so when you pull them out of the elementary budgets and put them into these 2 lines, is there any change in FTEs?
There is 0.2 for each music and art, so there was a 0.8 at the center, and we're upping it to 1.0.
So in total,
In total, it's a 0.2
0.2
in each.
thank you.
So the only addition is 0.2 in each.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay. And so one of the reasons we did this is in accounting purposes. So if we look at the next budget, which is athletics, we did that last year in athletics, and there were 5.5 elementary phys ed and health. And when we looked at the names and we looked at the allocations, it's really 5 and 5. So we were able to absorb a full position that was misbudgeted previously because they were in all these different locations. So you'll actually see a reduction in the elementary health and phys ed, but it's really just level funded. And so, you know, we were over budgeting because we had some people were budgeted at like a 1.6 because they were in so many different schools. And some of them were teaching health and phys ed. So we're able to allocate that correctly now. We know all the names. We have everybody there. So it looks like a reduction of one position, but it's the same people. And then we are pretty much level funding their ordinary budget. We did put a number of things in the revolving account last year, and our revenues exceeded our expenditures. So the revolving account is in really good shape, and we feel comfortable with this athletic budget. Okay. Next one's a big one, special ed. So some of the major changes in special ed is that so the first line is the special ed director. We have 1. The second line is our team chairs. We have 10. One of the team chairs was previously located in the school adjustment line location because that was their previous profession, or previous position in the district. So we're really just representing that, keeping the 10 full positions in there. So although that looks like an increase, it's the same amount of people. The clerical and supervision, that's an accurate reflection of 3.6. And for our speech therapists, we're looking to go from 12.8 to 13.6. And the way that we're going to do that is, you'll actually see that's a decrease in salary. So we have a retirement, and we're looking to replace it with speech assistants, similar to our CODAs that we have in our occupational therapy. And so we can get more services for students and more people, and it's a little bit more cost effective. So you see an increase in FTEs there, but a decrease in the salary. In the line below that, we're looking to add, for testing purposes, a full-time occupational therapist. So going with our BCBAs and our CODAs, we'd be going from, that should say 6.6 to 7.6. So we'd be advocating for an additional position there. And then as we go down, most of these are level funded until we get to the CODAs. We're also looking for an additional CODA. There's a lot of sensory needs in the district and a lot more occupational therapy needs. So we want to make sure that we're reflecting that appropriately and servicing that. And then the big ones for us is there's an additional para for hard of hearing. And then if you go to down to the last two lines, our biggest increases. So we're looking to increase the number of school adjustment counselors and increase the number of school psychologists. So it looks like we're going from 11.5 and up to 16. We added 2 this year, so we're looking to just round that out and add 3 additional ones to the district and 3 additional school psychologists. So really talked a lot about mental health and how we service students and address that. And, you know, I think this is really where we represent that. School psychologists and school adjustment counselors. It's a significant increase. We would be including that in this budget, and they would service from, you know, we have a plan where they would service from the elementary students, as well as an additional one here at the Higgins, and some more support at the high school. So we think that having these positions, really it's a comprehensive approach to servicing the mental health of our students. And then I'll just quickly go through the ordinary. There are some significant increases here. The biggest ones, we're looking to decrease contracted services, but the big ones you'll see are our out-of-district tuitions. If you recall last year, we identified some funding in the FY19 240 grant, and we took that money and applied it to tuitions, and so that's coming back into the budget this year. So we see a big increase in some of our out-of-district tuitions, and that's just an accurate reflection of what we're continuing to pay. So overall, we're looking at a big increase of about 1.7 in our special ed budget. So big portion of that is out-of-district placements. The rest of it is really addressing the social and emotional needs of our students.
Mr. Olympio?
Just real quick, online, see, 17010, the salary. Is that just steps and lanes, that increase? It's for the integrated preschool? That increase is just, because the FTEs are the same.
Yeah, I will look into that. That does seem like a big increase.
Yeah.
It could be people who had transferred in that
Okay.
are, that
Right.
have, you know, bigger salaries, but when we get into the detail, that's
Yeah.
something we'll flag. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you. I was just looking at the line for the paras for the integrated preschool. The reduction,
Yes,
is that for the McCarthy?
yes. So that was for programming needs. They required less paras this year. I think over the summer, that was some of them, we were able to move them to other positions in the district, so they were able to absorb them. And so I think these are some of the real pieces that we'll have the Director of Early Childhood look at from a staffing standpoint of, you know, what is appropriate. I think that a few years ago, we felt as though they may have been overstaffed, and so now we feel as though they're staffed appropriately. This is a reflection of, you know, what was actually happening this year in the schools.
Yeah, just my concern is in the McCarthy lines, it shows an increase of 50 students, and then to have a decrease in the integrated preschool by 3.5 FTEs, it's definitely something I'd like to kind of look at and see if that's correct.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, so we would be looking to increase the number of model peers that are coming in, but, you know, we can get more information on that as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next one, number 21, is staff development. It's level funded all the way down. Custodial plant, number 22, has been taken out, so it's zeroed out from last year. Transportation, which is number 23, a couple small increases. They added a driver. You'll notice a big increase in the salaries for bus monitors, and I believe that was a number of people who were paid below minimum wage who have now, we've brought up to minimum wage. So they still have that number of 9 FTEs. And then there's some increases as well for our homeless transportation and our regular transportation. We're anticipating bringing that back up online to fully fund those positions.
Mr. Hockman?
Thank you. On the homeless transportation, is there any hope of the revival of McKinley-Vento, where we were getting reimbursed?
So we could get reimbursed through circuit breaker if they're special ed. But we do have to budget what it is, and then if there's an offset, we'll be able to accommodate that. We are seeing just, with the pandemic, a number of people have been impacted, and try to keep them at their school of origin.
No, I certainly understand that, and I'm empathetic, and we need to bring our kids to school. I'm not, but we used to have a mechanism through state funding, and that sunset, or I think 2 years ago. I just wondering if there's any conversation up on Beacon Hill about reviving that, if you've heard anything.
I haven't heard any changes to McKinney-Vento.
I haven't either.
Thank you.
In terms of utilities, pretty much level funding everything. There is a slight increase that we're anticipating in electricity, but these are pretty consistent in terms of that. And then second to last budget is the district administration. There's a couple of big increases here that we do want to talk about. We'd be looking to add a couple positions. So as we go down, we'd be looking, there's a 0.5 addition in the clerical staff in, that is line 22009, and that is in, I believe it's accounts payable. They're looking to, sort of adjust the positions down there. In line 22013, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, you'll see an additional position. So there's 2.0 there. That is the Director of Early Childhood. So right now, it's the Director of Teaching and Learning, and the second position would be the Director of Early Childhood. That's where that is reflected. And then under our Attendance Supervisor, you'll see that that's increasing by another 1.0. So one of the positions that we were talking about at the Higgins right now is a part-time, something we added over the summer, part-time school adjustment counselor, part-time educational stability liaison. So we'd like to keep that person here as a full-time school adjustment counselor. So we'd need that part-time educational liaison, the stability liaison. So we put that position here in the attendance supervisor line and really try to get some more outreach. And what we'd like to do is hire a bilingual attendance supervisor to work with our current attendance supervisor around foster care, McKinney-Vento, do the educational stability work, as well as being able to speak multiple languages, either Portuguese or Spanish, knowing that our English language learners are having some significant attendance issues this year. So that is an increase there. And then you'll see a large increase under health insurance. And so we just want to make sure as we're bringing these positions back that we're funding it appropriately. So basically, we're going back to where we were 2 years ago. So we were at 9.6. This year we budgeted 8.3. So we're looking to budget 9.7. And then we see an increase in Medicare. We see level funding for most other areas. Small increase in advertising, central office advertising. And that is the work that we've been doing with John Guilfoy and their communications firm. And then the rest are pretty much level funded, but you'll see that the overall budget in central office is going up by 1.6. And much of that 1.4 is health insurance. Questions on this? Yeah.
The real quick question. With the unemployment compensation, would you anticipate that line item to go up? That's state unemployment, isn't it?
Yeah, we can look into it. I know that we've really been right on top of it. I know that that Steve Farrell, our HR person, has really worked close with Beth O'Donnell in the city. That's something that they've really been looking at closely.
Because I know a number of businesses have recently gotten notices that their rates have doubled and tripled, so I just don't want us to get caught off guard.
Yeah, we'll review that one again.
Yep.
That's a good one. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Carpenter?
Thank you. The line item for the school committee legal fees,
Yes.
that 25,000, is that the additional attorneys that we put on call?
Yes. Yep. So that would be level funded. I think that we've utilized them for some HR things, and we've been able to use the city solicitor for the contract negotiations, and it seemed to be working well. They work nicely together. So I wouldn't advocate for an increase, but it is a nice thing to have in terms of some of the HR things that we're dealing with. FMLA, I guess things change. I think we've utilized them quite a bit this year, so it's been a good thing to have.
Okay, so that was really my question is,
Yep.
have they been used and how have they been used? And you feel that it would be of value to continue with that additional support?
I do, and I can bring forth, some of the things that we've had them do, and share that with the committee as well.
I would be interested
Yep,
if you don't mind.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. Mr. Hockman?
Yeah, thank you. We are going through this kind of quickly, and I know it's
Yes.
just an overview. First time we're getting this, and that's fine. I see, can you point out the line, we're adding, Dr. Lord is transitioning into the director of the Remote Learning Academy, and we're
Yes.
adding an assistant superintendent. Is that new assistant superintendent in line 2205?
Correct.
And we're seeing a pretty significant increase in that salary.
Yes.
And then where do we find Dr. Lord's salary for?
So Dr. Lord's salary is, when we look at the detail, you'll see that it's going to be line 22013, and it's grant funded, so right now it's a zero in this appropriated budget, but you'll see it in the detail when we bring forth the detail next. So right now, you'll see the two positions in there at $212,000, and that is, right now, the curriculum and instruction person, the early childhood person. There's a third position that is funded out of the grant. So the net in the appropriated budget is 2.0, but you'll see in the detail when we bring that forward next week that there's three positions in there.
Okay, and then while we're on that line, that was going to be my next question. This, I think you're calling it the early childhood coordinator?
Director of Early Childhood.
Director of early childhood. Is that filling the kindergarten coordinator position that we previously had?
So previously, we had a kindergarten coordinator and a preschool coordinator, and so this position is essentially doing both of those jobs, overseeing all of our early childhood programming. And it's a Unit B position.
Okay, I think we last funded that kindergarten coordinator position in December. The retirement occurred, I think, in December of 2019.
Right.
I think Ms. Murphy was
Yep,
and we haven't had a kindergarten coordinator
correct.
in the district since then. I don't know that I'm seeing here. Can you get us the history of the salary of that position at some point before our
Sure.
next meeting?
Yep.
All right, thank you. And last thing, if I may, Mr. Mayor, might be directed more to you, Mr. Mayor, than to Dr. Vidal, and I've brought it up before, so it shouldn't come as any surprise. Line 22041 is the lease of the building for the administration. And I think for the 21-22 budget, which we're talking about now, that'll be the 5th year of that 5-year lease, if my memory's right. And we went into that building because we had a number of issues regarding and concerns, valid issues and concerns about the welfare and safety of the administration in the Kylie. I mean, there were some real issues with that, and we needed to transition sort of quickly, and we had an opportunity to bring the administration downtown, and that's all. You know, I'm certainly not questioning the decision that the committee made or doing that, but I have talked about the next phase before, and I think, you know, the transition, if we're looking at a transition for the administration from that building on Lowell Street to some other location, a city-owned or municipal property where we're not spending, it's a lot of money, it's going to take some time to accomplish that. So I don't know if there's been any conversations that have taken place, and this is maybe more rhetorical, Mr. Mayor. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I certainly am not. Maybe we can talk about this and maybe put it into a building and grounds subcommittee to talk about where we envision the 22-23 school year or fiscal year administration residing. I don't know if that's...
Oh, those are all fair questions. And yes, I think Building and Grounds Committee, or even I can get the information for the next school committee meeting. But Dr. Vidala and I we haven't dug too deep into that. I got to check. I think you might be right on the contract. I know there's some option years, but we got to discuss that. So, yeah, either, why don't you and I and Dr. Vidala talk offline, and either we set it up for this meeting, or we could do the next meeting, or we could do a Building and Grounds. But that's a topic we need to get into.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, boy, this has been, of all the crazy years, everyone's been working so hard at doing, just getting kids into school and just having education take place. I wasn't expecting anyone to have moved on this yet, but I think we just need to start talking about it.
Okay, and just the final page, 26, is technology. You'll notice that we increased, this was paid out of a grant this year, but we increased the number of FTEs to service our one-to-one K-12. And because of some restructuring, we're able to do that, and it's a really modest increase to get a whole person. So we're able to restructure a little bit with some of our newer people coming in. So we feel like we're in good shape in terms of that. And then you'll notice that the equipment line has been reduced by about $100,000, and that is because we were able to purchase a number of things for equipment out of COVID relief money and some of the FEMA money. So this budget is down a little under $100,000, around $84,000. So this is, I know this was a lot. It was, we went through it quick, but I definitely think that, we'll schedule another meeting soon, but this budget really reflects the needs of the district, and I hope it honors a lot of the things that we've talked about this year in terms of mental health and addressing learning loss, and, really looking at our younger students with our early childhood programming.
Great, thank you, Dr. Vidala, Dr. Lord, and your team. A lot of information here, good information. I'm sure we're going to have a number of questions, and we can have a couple now in a moment. But certainly, I think when we could have a discussion after in terms of scheduling, but I think we maybe need to look at having a meeting next Tuesday. I know we have a community meeting at 5:30 for some issues over near Emerson Park. 6:30 potentially, we could have a meeting here. And see if that would work for everybody. But to dig deeper into this, and again, take in everything that we've heard tonight, and again, I'm sure we're going to have a number of questions as we dig deeper into this, but this is a lot of the information that we need, or all the information we need. Mr. Arnottis?
Thank you. Just a quick, through you to Mr. Hockman, just browsing quick, in the House budget, McKinney-Vento was funded at about $14.5 million. Right now, I'd have to look at the Senate budget. I know that came out, I think, just this week, so we'll double check that and see. I don't know what the governor's number was, but we can keep an eye on that. And also, just while we're talking about that, I know the House and Senate both allocated our Chapter 70 at about $23,103,282, which is about $930 more than we got last year, so that's pretty good. But we will find out. I'll find out more about McKinney-Vento. I know that's an important conversation.
Great, thank you for that information, Mr. Arnottis. That's terrific. Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you happen to know the date that we have to work with as far as getting our budget to the city council so that we have our public hearing as well?
First in June, I believe it was. So our goal was to have Friday, June 4th, to have it posted on the website and take a final vote on June 8th, Tuesday, June 8th, at the regular school committee meeting, or have a special meeting on June 8th. And I think bring it to the city council on June 10th, sometime in that week was the dates we were looking for.
They would receive it June 10th and then have their meeting thereafter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll send out information in terms of the next meeting, but I think we're going to try to look at next Tuesday, the May 18th at 6:30 p.m. right here in the middle school. I was about to say the Wigan Auditorium, the middle school library. All right, thank you very much, Dr. Vidala. We're going to take a 2-minute break and then go right into our regular meeting. Oh, before we do,
Yeah,
Mr. Hockman?
I just want to make a motion to recess the budget session.
Thank Thank you. You've heard the motion to recess the budget hearing by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mr. Amico. All in favor? Thank you. That's a vote. Quick 2-minute break, and then we'll go right into the regular meeting.